Noel McDermott is a psychotherapist, founder of Psychotherapy and Mental Health Works Limited, who's worked in prisons and hospitals with male offenders. Noel, thank you very much for joining us. In your particular work, what do you find is sort of common among many of these male offenders?
There's obviously, I'm going to say this, but there's a lot of stuff about it that happens in the way people are brought up, and then how that these sort of negative experiences are reinforced by societal messages that collude with internal beliefs around the use of force and power and control and dominance, particularly from men towards women. And you mentioned it a bit yourself in the introduction, that there is work that every day that men need to be taking on board about challenging each other and themselves in their thought patterns. But particularly now, I think we've seen sort of a significant rise in the sort of prevalence of the violence and the severity of the violence, the number of people dying, and then the introduction now of online worlds with incels and these types of forces that are going on, which are inflaming and inflating these very sort of dangerous and negative ideas that some men have, and it's becoming more and more common. So if you look at sort of culture in schools at the moment, girls will tell you it's pretty horrific what they have to tolerate now, and the normalization of really abnormal, unhealthy behaviours online. I'm going to use the word D-pics. I'm not sure what words I'm allowed to use. Talking to you, but
yes, I know what you mean by that. So yeah, let's go with that.
The normalisation of that sort of behaviour is extraordinary. It's absolutely extraordinary. But if you talk to any woman, I don't know if you talk to your female friends, they'll tell you it's absolutely normal. They go on a dating app, exchange numbers, and it's almost the first thing that happens.
Well, also, I mean, not that it's acceptable on there, but it also happens on social media and apps where you certainly don't want that sort of content at all.
Well, I was just chatting with a friend on Facebook the other day and giving them advice on this, because it is illegal and it can be reported to the police, and I would encourage people to do that. But it is becoming more and more normalised, these things about power and dominance and control. So you have this multi-layered, sort of systemic issue that's going on, and sometimes it gets called things like misogyny, which could be a triggering word for some people, but I think it's a good explanation of what's happening. That's a good way of describing what's happening and what's going on at the moment. Yeah. And it has gotten worse, without a doubt.
When you look at the work that's being done here, £53 million for this particular project, which has had very successful results. Just to reiterate those figures, physical abuse of perpetrators reduced by 82%, sexual abuse by 88%, stalking by 75%. And the work they do, protection orders, alternative accommodation to stop them going back to victims' homes, addressing drug, alcohol dependency. We've spoken at the start very much about where those thoughts can originate from, i.e. misogyny in schools, which I take the point, but on the practical level as well, having worked with some of these offenders as well, it's also physically stopping them from being able to see their partners who they're abusing and who they think they have power over.
Well, it's a multimodal thing. That's the terminology that people use. So when you hear people talking about disrupting the behaviour, that's what they're talking about, which is an interagency linking up so that you would have the police, the local domestic violence reduction partnerships, wherever they exist, with local authorities, etc., communication with social services, protection orders around children, protection orders around women, etc., and so the person doing the perpetrator work would be linked into those systems, and would be, if you like, an early warning system, the canary down the coal mine, letting people know, oh, this person is having their triggers, this is what I'm observing in them, I think this could be a problem, and then you disrupt the behaviours that way. So that's one of the benefits of this type of approach, is that the in this framing, they're called a caseworker. The caseworker is aware of the person that they're working with. They're working with them for quite a long time. 12 months is a long time. And so they can be an early warning system and get those services involved to prevent that person being able to offend again, as well as working with that person to then help them change. And that's the really important bit for me, is that, so it's preventing further victimisation, but it's also, or stopping victimisation here and now, but it's preventing future victimisation by getting the perpetrator to change and no longer want to harm another person, which in its simplest form, I think nobody could disagree with that, could they?
No, I don't think so at all. Noel, always enjoy having you on. Thank you for joining us. Noel McDermott is a psychotherapist and founder of Psychotherapy and Mental Health Works Limited, who, as you heard, has worked in prisons and hospitals with male offenders. I said something that I'll say right at the start. I completely appreciate this is a very sensitive topic, and we will change your name, we will change your location if you are worried about anything like that. But if you are able to pick up the phone and give me a call about how we can better help people who are victims of domestic abuse, firstly, through the education part, when does this need to start? When do you actually need to start getting to grips with the fact that you do have people who have these views? And it's all very well to say, well, this person who is misogynistic is, they're just like that, they're terrible upbringing, da-da-da-da-da. In some cases, fine, yes. But also, you need to stop these views from manifesting in the first place, and what can be done to stop people getting in a position where they are looking online at misogynistic content. Does that come from social media? Is that education in schools? Is that calling out interactions? Is that even sort of unconscious bias that we see in films, that we see in popular culture about the way that women are perceived compared to men? So there's that point. I'd also like to hear your view on the sort of practicality of this. And I mentioned it to Noel, but you also have the sort of what abusers are able to do in terms of the accommodation to stop them being able to go back to victims' homes, even if they sort of own that particular property. If they're being abusive, well, that can't happen. Protection orders, addressing drug and alcohol dependency, which again, I'd like to hear your view on that, because I imagine a lot of this abuse does happen when someone is intoxicated or is sort of high, and doesn't make it okay. And obviously that still comes from a place of having that sort of deep-rooted misogyny and that deep-rooted sort of power complex. So, look, I'm not an expert on this. Noel is, but I really want to hear your stories and your views this hour about how we can go about better tackling domestic abuse and helping victims.